뭐 북이 얼마, 뭐 이런 것들은 알 수가 없어요. 그게 뭐 군용 어떤 용어를 쓰기 때문에 어쨌든 통신 내용은 당신 위치 어디냐, 우리 위치는 여기다. 자, 그렇게 해서 어디서 해서 뭐 급유하자, 뭐 이런 내용으로 판단이 됩니다. 자, 그러면은 여기에서 미국이 바보가 아닌 다음에야 이런 그 전략 폭격기가 동반된 이런 그 공중 훈련을 하는데, 이 전략 폭격기와 이 KC-135 공중급유기 같은 초고가의 자산들이 훈련을 하는 이 통신 내용을 아마추어 무선사들이 들을 수 있게끔 하겠습니까? 바보가 아닌 다음에야. 자기네들이 군용 코드로 무선을 해야 정상이죠. 그런데 미국은 그것을 공용통신망으로 했습니다. 그건 뭐냐? 내가 여기 있다는 것을 들어달라. 그리고 듣고 알려라. 그거 아니겠습니까? 또는 어쩌면 아마추어 그 무선 그 통신 또는 감청하는 그 커뮤니티 속에 미군의 어떤 미군의 협조 요원이 있을 수도 있는 것이죠. 그렇게 해서 알려라 라는 것 아니겠습니까? 예를 들어서 폭격기를 동원해서 또 공중급유기까지 동원해서 아주 뭐 비용과 뭐 이런 것들이 많이 들죠. 그렇게 해서 무력 시위를 했는데 북한이 모르면 이거 안 되지 않습니까? 그래서 이런 훈련을 미국이 했으니까 북한에게 전달해라. 이 인터넷을 통해서 전달해라. 그런 내용으로 저는 판단을 합니다. 그래서 이 그 B-52 같은 경우는 핵 폭격기는 아니기 때문에 여기에다가 그 ALCM, 즉 공중발사 장거리 순항 미사일, 사정거리 2,500km예요. 그것을 최대 20발을 탑재를 합니다. 그러니까 B-52 2대가 떴다라고 하는 것은 공중발사 순항미사일 40발을 쏠 수 있는 것입니다. 40발을 북한의 전역 2,500km니까 북한 전역 어딘가에 바로 그냥 정밀 타격, 핀포인트 타격할 수 있는 그런 자산을 한번 가지고 갔다가 돌아온 것이죠. 김정은이 평양에 도착하기도 전에 바로 그냥 때려버릴 수도 있었다라는 것을 과시를 하는 것이죠. 내가 조금만 일찍 떠서 너를 죽이고자 마음먹었으면 그 기차 단둥에서 뭐 중국에 있는 것을 공개할 수는 없으니까 단둥에서부터 평양으로 들어갈 때 그것도 한 3시간 걸린다고 하니까 그 사이에 내가 너를 얼마든지 죽일 수 있었다 라는 것을 과시한 것이다. 저는 그렇게 봅니다. 그거 아닐까요? 그래서 감히 이번에는 너의 행적을 다 알리고 내가 이 정도로 북한을 장악하고 있다 이렇게 자랑을 하고 갔는데 내가 마음먹으면 너 얼마든지 죽일 수 있다. 기차 하나 그냥 때리는 것은 아무것도 아닌 것이죠. 이 B-52 2대가 사정거리 2,500km짜리 정밀 장거리 폭격 그 순항미사일을 40발을 지금 가지고 갔을 수도 있는데 40발을 가지고 갔을 수도 있다라고 하는 것은 공중급유 훈련을 했기 때문에 그렇습니다. 최대 폭장을 했다. 이렇게 읽어봐 달라는 것이죠. 40발 김정은의 열차를 때려잡고 또 그 주변에 있는 모든 것들 영변 핵시설까지 때려잡기에 충분한 수량인 것이죠. 그걸 미국이 북한에게 보여줬다. 함부로 까불지 마라. 자, 지난해 5월 싱가포르 6월 12일의 싱가포르 미북 정상회담 직전에 김정은이 딸앤에 가서 비행기 타고 딸앤에 가서 시진핑 중국 주석을 만나고 왔습니다. 그러고 나니 좀 사람이 달라졌죠. 어떻게 이야기했냐? 트럼프 대통령이 이렇게 이야기를 했습니다. 중국 갔다 오더니 변했다. 시진핑
아저씨 여의도요. 빨리 가주세요.
안녕하십니까? 청각장애인 기사님이 운행하는
아저씨
택시입니다.
그냥 저 내릴게요.
바빠 죽겠는데. 저기 아저씨 택시 운전해도 되는 거예요?
아빠는 운전을 정말 잘하세요. 본인의 장애를 아시기 때문에 남보다 몇 배는 더 집중해서 운전하시거든요.
안녕하십니까? 청각장애인
잠시
기사님이
역으로 가주세요.
운행하는 택시입니다.
그러다 보니 운전은 늘 긴장 상태일 수밖에 없었어요. 항상 조심하시지만 가끔은 제때 소리를 못 들어서 오해가 생길 때도 있었고요.
청각장애인 분들이 상대적으로 시각과 촉각이 굉장히 예민하십니다. 이에 착안해서 운전 중 듣게 되는 모든 소리의 패턴을 인공지능으로 분류하고 구분해 운전대 LED와 허드 픽토그램으로 전달하는 것이 이번 기술의 핵심입니다. 도로 위 장애물과의 거리 또한 센서를 통해 자동 감지, 먼 거리는 길게, 가까운 거리는 짧은 진동으로 변환해 전달합니다.
청각장애인 기사님이 운행하는 택시입니다.
공덕역
운행을 시작합니다.
감사합니다.
전방 200m 앞 좌회전입니다.
아빠 저기 불 들어와.
처음에 청각장애인이라고 하셔가지고 조금 불안했는데 운전 너무 잘하시던데요. 또 엄청 안전하게 해주신다고 해야 되나? 그래가지고 목적지까지 너무 안전하게 잘 온 것 같아요.
요즘 운전대는 아빠 죄송합니다. 와.
안녕하십니까? 청각장애인 기사님이 운행하는 택시입니다. 운행을 시작합니다. 안전운전 착용해주세요.
여보 운동 가?
지금 가려고.
내가 보충제 타놨어.
웬일이래? 뭐 바라는 거 있어?
아니?
여보, 이게 뭐야?
왜?
뚜껑을 꽉 닫아야지. 다 터졌잖아.
근데 이거 어차피 방수야. 내가 씻어줄게. 짜잔 깨끗하지? 트로피온 터키 팝백은 신발 수납, 땀폭 수납되는 내부 완전 방수 50m 백입니다.
핑이 김정은에게 영향을 미치고 있다. 이렇게 불만을 토로했습니다. 그런데 묘한 공식이 있어요. 김정은이 시진핑 주석을 만나고 오면 아주 폭등해 있던 북한의 기름값이 뚝 떨어집니다. 이때 같은 경우는 절반 이하로 떨어졌습니다. 다롄에 갔다 왔을 때는 절반 이하로 떨어졌어요. 그 말은 중국이 북한에게 기름을 대준다. 유엔 안보리 제재를 위반하고 대준다. 그렇게밖에 해석할 수 없는 거예요. 북한에 들어가는 원유의 90%가 중국에서 들어갑니다. 그런데 북한의 기름값이 갑자기 폭락한다. 이건 공급이 많으니까 폭락하는 거 아니겠습니까? 그것은 김정은이가 한번 갔다 올 때마다 시진핑이 기름 준다. 또 기름 외에도 뭔가를 또 준다. 작년 5월에 김정은이 딸내미 갔다 오고 나서는 그 북한이 중국에 나가 있는 식당들 그게 다 문을 닫았었는데 그 식당의 종업원들이 다시 들어와서 식당을 다시 오픈했어요. 외화벌이를 할 수 있게끔 해준 것이죠. 그것도 사실 유엔 제재 결의안 위반입니다. 그런 것들을 하나하나 해주는 것이죠. 그래서 트럼프 대통령이 지금 다시 2차 북미 미북 정상회담을 앞두고 있는데 지난 5월처럼 1차 미북 정상회담 앞두고 있을 때처럼 김정은이가 시진핑 만나고 오더니
Okay, so let's have a look at this question. We're going to use Java's built-in linked list class to develop a linked list GUI. Okay, so write a class called student email that has data members name and number, name and ID, whatever you want to call them. The class should have a constructor, an appropriate accessor and mutator methods, and a toString method. So it's all pretty standard stuff so far. The toString method should return the student name, the student number, and an email address. And the email address is constructed from the
눈에 좋은, 간에 좋은, 장에 좋은 성분 일일이 찾아 헤매지 않도록 한 알에 압축해 담는다는 원칙. 필요한 건강에 플러스 알파가 되도록 정관장 알파 프로젝트.
Hello, this is Hellbent and welcome to tutorial 3 for the AutoHotkey GUI tutorial series. This is going to be the extended version where I'm going to include everything that I'm going to be doing within this tutorial all in one couple of videos. If you're only looking for a very specific section within this or a very specific topic within the edit box or edit field or whatever you want to call it, I've also done up to date, I've done 8 mini tutorials for it, and I have like, I don't know, about 6 or 7 more to do. But if you're only like a copy of this, too much, but here we go. Here's my lesson plan, right? So, you know, I have all the subjects, and then I talk about, I say, okay, hey, make sure you talk about something like that when you get to that point, right? So this is all the stuff. Normally I don't use this too much while I'm doing the tutorial. I usually just, you know, it's there if I need it. Tell you what, I'll let you know that this is what I was talking about when we get there, but I learned something from it, so you might eventually come to the being as thorough as I can. So first things first, let's add our actually let's back up a second. I've already, to save a little that's preloaded with it, this is where we'll put it. So like hi. Okay, so here we have our edit box. It doesn't have any size or anything like that, but we'll have a look at what it's done. So here we have our little edit box. We have our text that we've preloaded into it. So let's talk about positioning it. Positioning it's just like with positioning buttons and text and blah, 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 blah. If you want, I'm not going to go too deep into it with this. If you want to know more about more specific things within positioning, go back and watch the first tutorial or the second tutorial. The first tutorial I probably covered it better. And then as we go into more advanced things later on, you'll see how we can incorporate. We will get back around to some of these things that you might be missing if you just watch this. So first things first, we're going to need an X position within our GUI. So let's pick 200. So this is our X axis from left to right. It starts at 0 over here, and then it builds to whatever number over there. And then our Y axis works different than you might be used to. It starts at 0 at the top, and it increases as we go down, but normally you would have it increasing into negative numbers. With programming, it doesn't work that way. It increases into positive numbers. Our negative numbers are up, 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 up. Right, so it's a little bit weird like that. You might get confused from time to time, but after a few times you do it, it'll be second nature. So Y, I'm going to put 200. So now we have our edit box. It's going to be somewhere about there. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to change its width. So right now, whatever it can adjust its width on its own based on what I fill into it. But a better way of doing it is, because we don't always know what's going to be going into it, the better way is to pre-size this to a specific thing, so that way we can build all the rest of the controls around it. Right? We don't want it to be changing as we add things. So we're gonna specify what its width is. We're gonna just pick 200 So its width is going to be 200. With its height, we could put a height in here, but we're not going to, because with the edit box, it's actually better if we don't adjust the height. If you do want to adjust the height, I believe it is a minimum for the default font size, or for the text size, which is I think size 8. For that, you want the minimum height to be 13 or 15, maybe 15. I think it's 15 for sure, or it is 15 for sure. Okay, so here we go. And I know it's hard for you to see, but it is aqua. There's only a few colors that you can use, and we'll change.
If you really understood how artificial intelligence works, how valuable would you be? My name is Frank Kane.
Change the word of our color to that code. And then if we run it again, there we go. I know that one is probably really hard for you to see, but it's almost like a grayish color. But anyways, that's how you change the color inside. If you want to do it for multiple controls, like change the color for multiple controls, what you can do is outside of your control, you can type in GUI, comma, font, comma, and then you can put in that color. Now, any control, so let's say if I have any text controls or more edit controls, all of them that are following this line here, so anything that's below it, if I have multiple controls, until I change this back to something else, all of them are going to have whatever I change in here. So bear that in mind. The way you can do it, the normal default color. Okay, so now our text is underlined. We can have it bold. Alright, so now it's a little bit bolder, etc., etc. The normal things that you can do with a word processor or word editor or text editor, blah, 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 blah. And then after that, after those options, if we put another comma, we can actually change the typeface. So let's see. Is it MS? Okay, so we'll change it to, and there we go, we got a different typeface. So this is how you do that. And like I said, if you want to switch it back to its defaults, all you do is after the last control that you want to use it. So let's say if there was another control right here, and then I have this control, options, you just type in limit, and then without any spaces, you put in the limit, the amount of characters that you want them to be able to put. So we'll save that. And now I meant to test this earlier, but okay, just as I thought. Okay, so space does count as a character, as it makes sense that it would. So you can type in up to 8 characters, and a space does count as a character. So for example, you could use a phone number. So we got 555, what did I say, 8 digits. So we'll put in that 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so we wanted a phone number. We only want the 7-digit code plus the little slash there. And if they try to add anything more, it won't let them. Okay, you know what? I'm not even sure if you can actually hear this, or in other words, doing stored it. They're not going to be, anything's going to be cut off. So if we were to try to guess, let's say we wanted 10 lines of writing. We want to write 10 lines. Once we get past the second row, it actually adds in this horizontal or vertical slider. So as we go, we actually now have the option to scroll with an arrow. And if we made it a few rows higher, let's say 5, we'd actually be able to there we go. We'd actually be able to scroll up like this. Okay, so this is rows. Let me see if I had anything. Show with font size 2. Okay, I don't need to do that. My notes say show with the font size 2, but oh yeah, I understand what I'm talking about there. Okay, so the good thing about rows is it's automatically going to adjust itself based on your font size. So if I go in and change the font size now, I've said I want it to be 5 rows, and it doesn't care what my font size is. So I'm going to change its size to 22.
There is no way around Node.js as a web developer these days. But do you know how to build?
And it'll automatically adjust so that I still have 5 rows. Okay, so that's it for rows. Let me see. Okay, now next we're going to talk about the horizontal slider. So by default, we don't have a horizontal slider. There's no way for us just by default to get that. And in fact, the second that we got this vertical slider, in its default properties that we can't see, it's actually added something called wrap. Now what wrap does is, because we have this vertical slider, as soon as our text gets to the edge, rather than it continuing off into the sunset, what it's actually going to do is drop down to the next line. So if I, right, and nothing goes off over to the right. There might be a reason why, even without the vertical slider, the horizontal slider, that you might want to go off to the side. Now I think that's bad programming, but there might be a reason that you might want it to do that. So to accomplish that, all you have to do is just turn off the wrap feature, and the way you do that is you type in minus and then wrap, and now your text can actually go off to the right. But in order for you to actually read that, you would actually have to highlight your thing and scroll over, and that's going to get annoying real fast. The better way to do that is forget about this, typing in this, because the next command that we're going to type in has that minus wrap built into its default. So all we have to do for this is we just type in our options for our edit, we type H scroll. H scroll gives us our horizontal slider. And there we go. Now we can go off to the right, and we can scroll between it. All right, and we can drop down to a new line. Okay, so that's the horizontal scroll. Let me see, we're up to 19-20 minutes. Okay, I'm going to cut this video here. Like I said, it's going to be a couple parts because I don't like watching tutorials that are like an hour long, because I have to go do other things, blah, blah, blah. And when I come back to it, I'll lose my place. So I'd rather watch through a video, get to the end of it, and then if I have time to watch the next video, I'll watch the next video. If I don't, I'll come back and watch it the next day. Alright, so that is it for this. I will see you on the next one, and I'm going to be filming it right now. So have a good day. See you on the next one.
누구나 홈페이지는 필요하죠. 직접 만들어 보면 어떨까요? 누구나 윅스로 전문적인 홈페이지를 제작할 수 있습니다. 수백 개의 템플릿 중 하나를 선택하세요. 작은 비즈니스 운영자든 예술가든 꼭 맞는 템플릿을 찾아보세요. 드래그 앤 드롭 방식의 편리함으로 손쉽게 내가 원하는 홈페이지를 제작합니다. 텍스트를 변경하고 배경 이미지나 내 이미지를 업로드할 수 있습니다. 또 세련된 갤러리를 추가하는 것도 간단합니다. 온라인 쇼핑몰 제작도 잠깐이면 되겠죠? 클릭 몇 번이면 내 홈페이지가 내가 좋아하는 소셜미디어 채널과 연결됩니다. 구글 지도, 연락처 양식 등 다양한 인기 웹앱 서비스도 추가하세요. 이렇게 뚝딱! 언제 어디서나 최고의 경험을 제공하는 나만의 멋진 홈페이지가 완성됐습니다. 나만의 멋진 홈페이지 지금 시작하세요. 이보다 쉬울 수 없습니다.
Hey, how's it going, folks? This is Hellbent, and today I'm going to release my newest update to my color picker script. This is version 2.0. I'll go over the features. There's going to be a link in the description where you can get a copy of it. You don't have to download it. It's going to be in text form, so you just copy and paste it into a new script, save it, run it, and you're good to go. Okay, so let's go over the features of it. First feature is this window is set to be always on top. But because I use this as a scripting tool, and many of the other scripts that I create have an interface, and those are also... Hello, this is Hellbent, and welcome to tutorial 3 for the AutoHotkey GUI tutorial series. This is going to be the extended version where I'm going to include everything that
My team and I always had trouble managing our tasks until one of my colleagues found Monday.com. You can see the
Hey, how's it going? This is Hellbent, and welcome to the first tutorial in the GUI short tutorial series for AutoHotkey. In this series, we're just going to be looking at the bare bones of everything to make it really quick for you, really easy for you. I already have most of this stuff covered in full-length tutorials, so if you want more than just the bare bones, if you want to know how to do things that I'm not going to be covering in this, most of it will be covered in the regular series. This is just very short and to the point. Okay, so in this first episode, what we're going to do is we're going to create a GUI. And before I do that, I'm actually going to show you a couple of examples that you can do. So I've gone ahead and I've selected a few. So I have the classic kind of Windows form thing where, you know, we just input some information and push some buttons, push this, push that, and it does whatever we want it to do. Okay. Then we have, let me just pull up a couple more of the same kind of deal where we have buttons and edit fields and check boxes and etc., etc. The same deal. Right? Then we can get into custom buttons. So with this, we have, rather than just the stale buttons that comes as a default, we'll learn how to create custom buttons that can actually make our GUIs look more presentable. More of the same. Here we have we'll learn how to do scrolling text, how to make things move on your screen, etc., etc. And last, we have where we can actually create games and things like that. So this is a game that is created solely in AutoHotkey using the GUI. Alright, and likewise we can show one more example of that. One more. Okay, so once again, this is another game that is created solely using AutoHotkey GUI. Okay, so that's it for that. let's jump into this. So let me close up a bunch of this stuff. 10 and 1. Okay, so all I have so far is a hotkey to exit whenever I want. We're not going to need it, but it's always a good idea to have an emergency exit. And I also have single instance force, which just means that I can, if I'm doing testing and I go to run it again and a previous version's running, it's not going to ask me if I want to override it. So that's what I have so far. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create our template. And the way we do that is we just type in GUI and then show. And then what we need is some parameters here. So if we, depending on where on our screen that we want it to pop up, like if we have a specific spot, so for example this top corner, we could play around with an X value and a Y value to get it to show up there. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to create its width and its height. So let's start out with something medium size. We're going to start off with a width of 500 and a height of 500. The last parameter that we're going to add in is what we're going to title it. So if we leave this parameter blank, whatever we called our program, our script, that's going to be the name that shows up. If we want some other name, we just type it in here, GUI. And we will add, after this, we will add in a return and run it. Okay, so here we have our blank template for our GUI. The next thing what we're going to do is we're going to add in our first control. So everything that we add to it, whether it be a checkbox, a button, some text, tabs, etc., etc., all of these we're going to consider as controls. And we have the ability later on to manipulate them using them as a control. So the first control that we're going to learn is the text. And the way we add in our controls is we just type in GUI, comma, and then add, and then the control type that we want. So in our first example, we're just going to do a text control. The next parameter, what we're going to add in is its position within our GUI. So if I look at this white space within our GUI, this very top corner is going to represent a value of x0 and y0. And our x is going to grow in this direction. So it starts at 0 and it'll start building up to 500, which is our end. And our y starts here and it grows in this direction. So this is 0, 100, 200, 300, 400, 500, etc. So we're going to decide where on our GUI we want our text. For this example, we're just going to put it right up in the top left corner at x of 10 and y of 10. Because we're using text, we don't have to assign a width or a height to it. It'll do that on its own. But if we have a plan of changing it later on, what we're going to need to do is allocate some space for it with a width or a height. But that's only if we're going to be changing it through some other process later on while the program's actually running. In other words, we don't need to worry about that. We also don't have to worry about adding labels to this or variables. And I'll get into more of that as we go through the series. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to create the text that we want. So here we have GUI. What we're going to do is we're going to add, what we're going to add is this control type. Then we have the options, and there's a whole bunch of options that we'll get into later on. But for now, we're just having its position within the GUI. And then last, we're going to have the text that is displayed. So we'll just type out, this is the text. So there's our text. We'll go ahead, save it, run it, and there we go. We can also add in multiple of these controls. So we'll quickly add in 2 more. This one, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pick the end location here, and I'm going to add to that value. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to say x plus 10. And it already knows what our x value is. So this is where it begins, but it also calculates where it ends. So what we're doing with this one is we're adding to the end of wherever this last control ended. So we're doing x plus 10. We don't need to do the y because we're going to be on the same line. Other than that, we're good. So, and we'll just type in, this is more text. And then we'll come down and we'll add one last one where we're going to position it somewhere else on our GUI. This time we're going to have an X of 50 and a Y of 150. So our text is going to be closer to the middle. Well, it's not going to really be the middle, but it's closer to the middle. And this is the last text. We'll run it, and there we go. So we can see with this one here, we added 10 pixels to the end and to begin our next line. And in this one here, we started at X50, so 50 pixels over and 150 pixels down. Okay, so that's the end of this one. Come back for the next one where we're going to take a look at the GUI font, how to change the size of the text, how to change the typeface, and its color. Have a good day, and I'll see you on the next one. How's it going? This is Hellbent, and welcome back to GUI short tutorial number 2. In this one, we're going to be looking at how to change the font, the size, the text type, and all that within AutoHotkey GUIs. This is a mini tutorial series, so everything that I'm covering in this is only being done in a minimalistic way. So if you're looking for a more comprehensive tutorial, I have a complete series. Well, I guess it's not complete yet, but I have a series where I cover things in much more depth, and they range in length from anywhere from 15 minutes to over an hour for one topic. So if you want to know everything to do with the GUI, I suggest you go for that. If you just want to know how to get things up and running really quickly, this is an okay series for that. Okay, so what we're going to do in this one is we're going to change the size of our text, the color of our text, and the typeface. So the first thing we're going to do is we are going to add in our control. So the control we're going to use, once again, is the same as we did for the first tutorial, which is our text. We're going to position it on our GUI at X10, Y10, and then we're going to display some text. Okay, so let's have a look at what we have. We have our basic template, 500 by 500, with a line of text on it. So now what we want to do is we want to change its color, we want to change its size, and we want to change its typeface. There's two ways that we can change its color. We'll look at first how do we change the typeface and its size. So the way we do that is above any controls that we want it to affect. So we can decide if we want it to only affect one control or 2 controls or 10 controls. We can decide that, and I'll show you how to do that in a second. So the way we do this is we just type in GUI font, and we do this above any controls that we want it to affect. So GUI font, and then in this first parameter, what we're going to do is we're going to decide its color and its size. So for its color, we just type in C and then the name of the color. Now there's only about 15 or 16 colors that you can use by word. For example, black, aqua, lime, and so on and so forth. For everything else, you're going to need a hex code or a RGB value. So it could be something like, it'll be something like 000000, right? And you can find these online if you look up something, if you look up HTML color codes on Google. If you type that in, you'll come to like a color picker, and then you can pick whatever color you want, and it'll give you a six digit numerical sequence or alphanumerical sequence, and you can use that instead. So it'll be something like A, B, 03, H. Well, actually, I guess H isn't going to be in there. F4. You know, it'll be something like that. And then you can just use that as a substitute. Or you can look up on Google in the AutoHotkey section for the colors that you can actually use by word. So, for example, you can use silver, like I said, what we're going to do is we're just going to use aqua for our example. So we're going to change the color of our text to aqua, and we're going to change its check. Let me try another one. I'm pretty sure this one works. So I'm going to copy that. And paste it into here. Save the changes and run. And there we go. So we have a different typeface now. So, like I was saying before, we can, all the controls that follow this line are going to be affected. If I want it to be reverted back to its normal defaults, or if I want to change it to something else, I just add in. So let's add in another line real quick. And we'll do X10, but it will let it pick where it drops down to. The color in the options for the control, I can just type in the color thing there. So I'm going to type in red for this guy. This one I'm going to do black, and this last one I am going to do lime. Okay, and it'll completely ignore this color here. It'll use this color instead. Okay, so there we go, red, black, and lime. Okay, so that's it for this tutorial. Come back for the next one. I think the next one, I haven't fully decided yet. There might be something in between what I'm going to say right now, but I think the next one is going to be how to add buttons and how to attach those to subroutines. So I will see you on the next one. Have a good day. Be sure to hit that like button. These series are dependent upon your activity or your feedback within these. If there's not enough feedback, then these series won't continue. So be sure to take the 2 seconds to hit the like button or the dislike button. Choose one, but do one of them. Don't just walk away. Do one of them. All right, and I'll see you on the next one. This is Hellbent, and welcome to Auto Hotkey short tutorial number 17. In this one we're going to be looking at how to add tabs to a GUI. So let's just jump into it. The first thing we're going to do is add in our control. So with this we're going to be using the newest update, which is the tab 3. If you're not sure about what they do, just look up the documentation on the different tabs. Value if your screen resolution makes it too big or whatever, but I think for the most part most people will be able to accommodate a width of 1000 and a height of 600. So what I'm going to do is, because I don't really want it to look like strange on the GUI, what I'm going to do is I'm going to position it in the top left corner, and I'm going to make it fill the whole space from the left to right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set its X position to 0 and its Y position to 0, so that way it's right up in the top corner, and then all the tabs that will be added. Next I'm going to make its width the same width as our GUI, but with the height I'm going to leave a little bit of space below it, so that way we can add in some extra controls, and I'll show you how to add in those. So I'm going to make its height 400. And right now if I run this now, all we're going to have is just basically an outline of our tabs. So here we go. I know it's difficult to see, but there we go. Okay, so now let's look at how we actually add in our different tabs. So in the third parameter here, what we're going to do is we're going to add in our different tabs. So I'm just going to call my tabs tab 1, and then to separate the tabs, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in a pipe, which is the shift of this. And then I'm going to add in my next control, and I'm going to add in, let's go with 5. I'll add in 5 tabs. So now if we run this now, what we'll end up with is 5 different tabs that we can switch between. The next thing we're going to look at is if you're not satisfied with how these tabs look. So you notice how I have all this space over here. What if I want to make it so that way the tabs actually, the buttons for the tabs, or the way that I switch between the tabs, what if I want them spaced out a little bit better so that way it fills up this top row. Also, likewise, if I was to change this 5 to, let's say, a lot of text, what I'm going to end up with is these tabs here are all going to be small, while this one's going to be much larger, and it'll look a little bit distorted. So what we can do to fix this, or to make it look a little bit better, is we're going to create a little bit of white space. Now, the way we create white space, for the first one, we have to be very specific about it, but all the other ones afterwards we can just start adding in some space in between the characters and the pipes. But for our first one, what we're going to definitely need to do is we're going to put an escape character, and then we're going to add X amount of spaces. So let's go with 5. And then after our text, what we're going to do is we're going to add in 5 more spaces. And now if I run it, I can see that that space has actually been added. I know it's a little bit, because we're only adding in 5 spaces, so it doesn't really look that noticeable. But if I was to add, it'll start to become a little bit more apparent that we're adding space into it. And we can space them out so that way they're all evenly sized, and depending on the amount of text that we have on them, we can remove a little bit of space, add a little bit of space. One of the problems that you're going to get, though, is once our tabs start to get to a certain point within our GUI. So let's say if it gets to about here, if all our tabs start to get to here, what they're actually going to do is going to drop down and start a new row. So to prevent that from happening, what we can do is we can add in its options, we can type in -wrap. And this way, no matter what, even if our tabs go way off the screen, they're not going to drop down to the new row. What will end up happening is it'll add the ability to scroll, so you don't want that either. So just make sure you space them so that way they fit properly within the main screen of your GUI. And you can play around with the spacing until you're happy with how everything looks. Okay? So like I said, for the first one, you have to make sure you add in this escape character, because if you don't add that in, it's not going to actually add in that white space beside it. No matter how much space I add, it's not going to actually add it in. But if you add in that escape character, you will get that space. Okay? Let me see. Next, what we're going to do is, let's say when we run our program, here, let me get rid of some of these so that way it's a little bit more manageable to see. So I'm going to re-add all those controls again. Now by default, our first tab is going to have focus when we run our program. But if we don't want it to be the first tab that has focus, what we're going to do is, after the control, what we're going to do is double up the pipes. So if we want it to be, if we want the third tab to have focus when we run our program, all we're going to do is we're just going to add another pipe in here, and now when we run our program, it'll be the third tab that's selected. Let's look at, we can also add for visualization, we can make our tabs look like buttons rather than their default tab looking thing. So we're just going to type in buttons in our options, and now rather than it looking like tabs, they look like little buttons. And the whole spacing thing works the same way with that. We can also make it so that way our tabs, rather than being on the top of our tab control, rather than being up here, we can have them running down the left side, the right side, or the bottom, just by specifying in the options left or right or bottom. And we'll run that quick. So here we have it on the bottom, but
환희의
As you can see, we can't actually, it's very difficult to actually make out where our tabs end and where the rest of our GUI begins. So what we can do is we can add a border around our tab to make it a little bit more clear where it is. So all we're going to do is in the options, we're just going to type in border. And now when we run it again, it's a lot easier to actually see the shape of our tabs. Okay, let's get rid of this bottom and put it back up to the top. And we don't need the wrap because our buttons aren't going to be too big. So next, let's look at how we can add a label to this and how we can associate it with a variable. So just like with our other controls, all we do is to associate a variable with it, all we do is type in v and then the name of the variable we're going to be using that's associated with it. So I'm just going to call this var, and then we're going to attach this to a label, and we're going to call our label label, because why not? I'm going to come down here and I'm just going to add in that label and add in its return. Next, what we're going to do is what we're going to do now is we're going to make it so that way when we switch between tabs, it's going to execute this label, and then we're going to test to make sure that that part of our program is working. So now when I switch tabs, I should get a message box. There we go. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to start playing around with that variable, and we're going to check out what its value is, so that way, depending on the value of that variable, we can have our script do different things. So what we need to do first, as soon as our label is executed, what we need to do is have it submit those values, or the new updated values of that variable. So what I'm going to do is just GUI submit. And no hide. So now, depending on which tab we're going to be on, it's going to update that value. Now what I'm going to do, because this next part, I need to have a differentiation between numbers and other characters and things like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make 1 is A, 2 is 2B, 3C, 4D, 5E. Now what we're going to do instead is we're going to actually print out the value that's currently stored in that variable var when we do the submit. And what we should get is, depending on which tab we open up, we should have a literal string of that tab's name. So if I hit this tab here, what I should get is a message that says 5E. And there we go. And likewise for the rest of them. Now, let's say that that isn't something that I want. I want it to actually be numerical values based on its position within the tab control. So I want the first control to be 1, the second tab to be 2, 3, 4. I don't care about their name, I just care about their position. So what we're going to do is in here we're going to type in alt submit. So it submits a different alternative submit command, so that way we're going to get its position rather than the value of the name. So now when we run this again with our alt submit, what we get is we'll get the number that's associated with its position. So if I hit this one here, I'll get a 1. If I hit this one, I'll just get a 5. And we can use the value that's stored in that variable to do different things depending on what we need it to do when you select that tab. I think that covers that pretty much. Now let's go into actually adding in our controls. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to comment this out because we don't actually need it. And what we're going to do is we're going to start adding in controls. So now that I have my tab control added, if I start adding in any controls after it, it's automatically going to be in the first one, but it's better to actually clarify where the control is going. So what we're going to do is we're just going to type in here GUI and then tab, and then we can specify its specific name, so we can write in it's the 1A, and this becomes a problem when you start adding in that space, because you're going to have to also include all that space to it. So the better way of doing it is just use its position. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we're going to specify here. So GUI tab, and we're going to do this into the first tab. And now all the controls that I add after that, so for example a button, will be part of that tab. So let's go ahead and add in a button. And I'm just going to play with its width and height. So I'm going to make its width 200, its height 20. If I don't add a specific X and Y value, it'll just use its normal default margins. In other words, what I suggest you actually do is use the relative positioning. So let's say if I want my first control to be up in the top left corner, what I would do is I would just do X10 and Y10 for my first control, Y plus 10 for my first control, and then after that I'll use more relative positioning for my other controls. And if I switch to tab 1, we now have our button right here, and it's positioned 10 pixels down from the top of this control and 10 pixels to the left or to the right. If I want to start adding controls to the other tabs, all I have to do is just once again specify which tab that I want to add the controls to. And we're going to add this one, we're going to add to 3 to the third tab, and we're going to copy our button. But we'll change its position a little bit so that way it looks a little different. We'll do 100 by 100. We run it again, and now when we run our third tab, it's on that tabs, and then our first one, and so on and so forth. Now I had purposely, like I said, I had purposely made its height only 400 pixels so that way we could actually add some controls afterwards. Now what's going to happen if I was to, so I can see that this height is 400, so anything that's over 400 pixels, so let's say if I do this to let's say 450, so we can see that we're in the third tab, but I positioned it Y450. What's going to end up happening is we're not going to be able to see that control. It's clearly still within the range of our GUI, but because it's outside of the range of our tab control, we're not actually going to be able to see that control, that button. So if I run it, it should be somewhere about here, but as you can see, we can't see that. So if we want to actually add controls in this area here, what we need to do is get out of adding controls to our tab. The way we do that is similar to the way that we go ahead and set our font back to default, and the way we do it is just type in GUI tab and then nothing following it. And now when we add this down to here, and I'm going to put this back to 150, so we'll have that button there. So now when I add this control in here, we should actually see it where I said we would. So here we have that control right here, and we have our controls for our tabs. So that's how we get out of adding controls to our tabs. Let me see if I have anything else that we need to cover. I think that's it. I think that covers everything that we need in this mini tutorial. So you know how to add in your tab control, you know how to make tabs for it, you know how to change it into buttons, you know how to do the alt submit, attaching it to a label, attaching a variable to it, you know how to give a specific tab focus, how to add controls into each individual tab, and etc. etc. Okay, I think that's it for this one. Have a good day, and I'll see you on the next one. How's it going? This is Hellbent, and welcome. Hey, how's it going? This is Hellbent, and welcome to the first tutorial in the GUI Hey folks, this is Hellbent. Do with it. Okay, so for this, we're just as soon as we run it, it's going to stay running until we actually go and manually exit it. A script, and you're going to want what's going to happen. We get this annoying dialog box. So what we want to do is we want to get rid of this annoying dialog box, so that way it does it on its own. So all we're going to do is we're going to type in single instance, and because I have a nice compiler or a script editor, it does it for me. And then we're going to type in force. And what this is going to do is, if we have a previous version of our script running, it's going to actually exit that and replace it with our new version. So let's change this to something else. We'll save. So our previous version is still running. Last time we tried this, we got that annoying dialog box. This time if we try, we got nothing, and we got our new updated thing. Okay, so that's the force. So if we don't want that annoying dialog box, and each time we make changes and we want to test those changes, this is the command that we're going to use for that. What if we don't want it to replace our previous version with a new version? So what we need to do instead is we're going to say ignore, and we're going to make a little change, dog. And if we save and we go to run it, we don't get the dialog box, but it's still our previous version. Our previous version is still running that had the word hi instead of dog. If we want it to actually replace it, what we'd have to, with this ignore command, what we'd have to do is actually go and exit our previous version and then run it again, and we should get our new dog. So that's ignore. And the last one we'll look at is off. And what off is going to do is allow us to run multiple instances of the same script. So an example that I could use for this is, let's say if I have something that I want to click. So let's say if I want to click right here, and I also want to click right here. Or how about, yeah, okay. So I want to click right here, and I want to click right here. And I have a script where I'm going to tell it that it clicks right here, and then I want to, if I also want to click here, rather than writing a new script or making this script be able to do two positions, what I can actually do is just run the same script twice and have one of them set up to run here and one of them set up to run here. So we have our single instance off, we have a version running, and if we hit run again, we now have two instances. If we run it again, we now have three instances of the same script, four instances. Let's add a couple more. 1, 2, 3. So we should be up to 7. So we have 7 instances all running concurrently of the same script. So that's single instance. I hope you enjoy. If you like these kind of tutorials and you like to keep them coming, be sure to hit that like button. Your support's needed to keep me motivated to do these. So, and I will see you on the next one. Have a good day.
네, 엄마. 별일 없지?
걱정 마세요, 엄마.
걱정돼서 전화했지.
걱정하지 말라니까. 떠난 사람도 떠나보낸 사람도 모두가 행복한 여행. 그 시작은 우수여행 상품입니다. 분야별 전문가들이 꼼꼼하게 선정한 안전한 여행 상품. 우수여행 상품을 만나면 당신의 여행이
그런 거였구나.
Hey folks, this is Hellbent and welcome to mini tutorial number 6. In this one we're going to be looking at the single instance command. I use this command in all my tutorials, so I figured it's about time that we get it out of the way and show everything that we can do with it. Okay, so for this we're just going to create a simple hotkey, and I'm going to use Control T. So when I press Control T, it's going to do something. What it's going to do is just pop up a message box, and we're going to have it say hello. We're going to Hello, we're back for part 2 in the extended version for the auto hotkey to G, all one word. And let's there we go. So we got some text now, so that way we can show that they can't do that. Okay, so we have our text. I have it highlighted. I press a key and I can't erase it. I go to try to type other things, I can't do anything. So this is read only. So the person can only read it, they can't alter it, edit it, blah blah blah. Easy peasy. So let's move on to the next thing. Next thing is want tab. Okay, for me to do this, let me clear up some of this stuff. Let me add those rows. Okay. So what I'm going to need now is a button, or well, I just need another control, but I'm going to use a button. GUI add button, and just so that I don't have to change its size, I'm going to type something on it. Okay, so we have a button. Okay, so now if you're familiar with working with Windows Form applications or things like that, normally if you press the tab key, all it does is it moves it from one control to the next control. So for example, so right now I have the edit box as the control that I'm currently in, and if I press tab, it jumps down to the button. I know it's difficult to see, but the blue, it is highlighted now. I can jump back to the edit box and then back to the button, back to the edit box. Right, so this is what tab normally does. Now for this part, there's two options, and I suggest you do the do nothing option. So what if instead of the tab key jumping from one control to the next, instead you want it to actually add space in between your text? So you know how when you press tab, it gives me some space, so I can actually do some stuff, right? It gives me predetermined amount of space in between blah 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 blah. So what if I wanted to do that within my edit field? The do nothing option is all you have to do is press the control button plus tab, and now your tab key works like it normally would. And then when you go back to pressing tab the other way, goes like that. The do something option, which I don't recommend, but it does exist, so I'll show you it, is in the options. What you can do is type in want tab, all is one word, save it, play, and now when you press tab, it'll tab over space. But you can't do the reverse of the do nothing option. So I can't press Control plus tab to now jump to the button. So like I said, the do nothing option where you don't do anything, you just hold Control plus tab is in my opinion the better option to go. But if you want to make it so that way, all you have to do is just press tab. All you have to do is type want tab into your options, and that is it. Okay, so easy peasy. This one is going to take a minute. Okay, want return. Now, in what tutorial was it? I think it was if statements. If you watch the if statements tutorial, throughout that we use the input box. And normally, so let's assume that this is the area in the input box where we actually type in. There was also a button underneath it that said OK, but I didn't actually have to press that button. All I had to do was press enter, and that OK button would get executed automatically. And that's because that OK button was assigned as the default button. So I'm going to show you how to make it so that way if somebody's typing something in here, if they press enter, it's going to execute that default button. So what we're going to do is in our button over here, we're going to do in its options, we're going to type in default. Default, I'm going to get rid of this want tab. Default, and then I need a label. And if you watched the tutorial on buttons, which I assumed you did, you would know what I am doing. Okay, so I'm just going to call this but1 just to be simple. And I'll get into this in a few minutes. I'll get into that whole label naming thing in a few minutes, but I'm not going to dwell on that just yet. Okay, so I have the call to the label. Now I need the label itself. Button 1, I need my colon. Okay, and all we're going to do is we are going to have a message box. Now the reason why we're using a message box is just because it's an easy way to actually see that something is happening. Right? I mean, you get a box there displayed on the screen. I mean, it's pretty easy to see. Okay. So now I have this button is assigned as the default button. And what if I want, so like I said, let's say you want to set up a edit box where all they have to do is they type in their information and then they press enter. They don't need to press anything. They don't need to do anything like that. In fact, they don't even have to need to do a lot of things. Okay, so you can actually have the button hidden, blah, blah, blah. But let's just leave it like this. Okay, so we want it to execute that default button, but right now it's not going to do that. So here I am. I type in my information, I press enter, and instead of it executing that button, what it's actually done is just drop me down to the next line. So if I want it to actually make it so that way it executes that button, what I do in my edit is I type minus want return. Is it want return? I'm pretty sure it's want return. I'm just going to use, yeah, want return. Okay, there it is. Okay, so there we go. So now what it's going to do is rather than dropping down to the next line, it's actually going to execute our button that has been defined as the default. So remember before when we pressed enter, all it did was drop down to the next line. This time it should give us our message box. And there we go. Okay, so that is the want return. All right, let's get this cleared up. Okay, I think I can leave everything like it is for the next thing. Okay, so that's want return. Let me see where I am. Oh, 8 minutes. Okay, I think I have enough time for this. Okay, this one's a little bit more complicated, but it is incredibly, incredibly useful for those of you that are going to be doing any kind of presentation of information in a table or anything like that. So what you're going to want to do is set up tab stops. So that's what we're going to be doing with this. We're going to be setting up tab stops, and in order for me to do that, what I need to do is I'm going to get rid of the X and the Y. I'm going to get rid of the X and the Y so that way it puts it up here in the corner, and that way I can increase the size, because we're going to need a bigger edit field in order for this to be displayed properly, or for you to be able to see it properly. I'm going to change it to 400 width. Let me see. And we will go, or different categories are going to have different amount of space requirements, right? So the name of something might be a 10-digit number. So the most amount of space that we're going to need for it each time is 10 spaces. And then the next column could column. So the way we do that is there's two ways we can do it. We can do it where we set up where it's constantly the same tab space between one column and the next. So in that we just type T, and let's go with 30. So we'll tab 30 pixels. I think it's pixels. I'm pretty sure. It definitely is not characters. I don't know what exactly it is. It could be pixels. It could be some other way that they define it, but it's definitely not characters. But we're going to set our tab stop to 30. Then in here, what we're going to do is we're going to actually type in some information. So let's say we had name, and I'm not very good at thinking on the spot, so rather than me trying to figure out different kinds of things, columns that we want, I'm just going to use numbers. So the next one is going to be called 1. Then we're going to tab over again, and it's going to be 2, and then we're going to tab over again. So what do we want? We want 4. So we have 1, 2, 3. So there we go. Okay. And I'll show you out like this. So here we go. We have 4 different columns. And if I drop down to the next line and type in the information, and then if I press, because remember we don't have that want tab in place, we actually have to press Control tab. So I'm going to press Control tab, and it automatically puts me into that line. I press Control tab again, puts me into that line, and so on. Right? And then if I can continue filling in my information. And I can have the program do this automatically. I can have it set up by using variables, or have it run through loops, have it assigned to arrays and things like that. So I'm not going to go into like how you make a table. I might eventually come into something like that way down the road, but you don't have to. It's not about your user actually filling this in. I mean, you can make it so that they do fill it in just like how I'm doing right now, but there is obviously ways that you can automatically have a table built. Okay, so this is with a set tab stop for all of them, but like I said, certain things are going to need more space than other things. So the way we're going to set it up this time is we're going to have individual tab stops. So our first one is going to be 30, which is going to be this 1. So this 1 is going to be set to 30. And how it works with when we're using only one individual one is it takes the space between the first character of the thing before it. So for here it's right here, and it's 30, and then it goes from here to 30, and then from here to here another 30. When we do it individual, like we're going to be doing now, it's always going to work off of the first position here. So this would be 30, this would be 60, this would be 90. Okay? If we were doing the exact same thing as we're doing here. but we're not. We're going to do something different. So the first one's going to be 30. So our one column is going to be, our name's going to be in the same spot. Our one's going to be in the same spot. But we want our 2 to be further over. So what we're going to do is we're going to have tab 99. And then our last one, we're going to have tab 133. Okay, so there we go. We have our first position, our second position, our third position, and our last position. Okay, we'll save it and have a look. And there we go. And like I said, you can play around with these values to put your columns however you need them to be, but you can make some nice tables now. Okay, so that is the tab stop, and we're up to 15 minutes. I got enough time for something else quick. Okay, so I don't think I need to go further into this. Just play around with it and you'll get the hang of it in no time. Let's see. Next, what we're going to do is uppercase, lowercase. Okay, if you know anything about programming languages or things like that, this one here is actually in the computer. It's actually just a bunch of ones and zeros, and the order of these ones and zeros determines a numerical value, and the first couple of digits to the left will tell the ones and zeros that equal out to the number 67. The uppercase one actually has, is it lower or higher? I think it's lower. So, but anyways, this just demonstrates the kind of things that goes on with the computer. So a lowercase a is not the same value as an uppercase. So in your program, there might be a reason why you need the values to always be the same. So you need, if the person's typing in an A, you don't want to have to convert it within your program, or you don't want to have any problems with your program. So the easiest way to do that is make it so that way when they input data here, no matter if they put in uppercase or lowercase, it's automatically going to convert it to one or the other. And the way you can do that is in our edit options, we just specify what we want it to be. So we can do lowercase and run that. And even if I type in, even if I have the cap lock on, I cannot type uppercase. So for example, here. So obviously this L is an uppercase, and if I go to paste it into here, it converted it to a lowercase. Okay, so all my characters are going to be the same. I have no problems. That, paste it in, and everything gets converted to uppercase. Okay, so I think we will end this one here. Hey, how's it going? My name's Hellbent, and welcome to tutorial number 4 for the AutoHotkey graphical user interface tutorial series. In this one, we're going to be looking at the radio button and all the different things that we can do with it, as well as some tips and tricks to make your scripting easier, and some cool things like that. But before we jump into it, I have some bad news, or maybe some bad news. The AutoHotkey tutorial series might be dying soon. There just doesn't seem to be enough interest. It has nothing to do with the amount of views, because AutoHotkey isn't exactly like you're not going to get 1 million views for creating AutoHotkey content. It has more to do with the ratio of views to likes. So I'll have a lot of videos that have 1,000 views on it, but it'll only have 2 seconds to hit the like button, so they couldn't have liked it. Let's go into this. We're looking at the radio button. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to just add in the radio button. So the way we add options. So our positioning, the color of the text, variable names, label calls, blah 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 blah, and then one more comma, and we have the whatever text is going to be beside it. So let's just type in some generic text. Okay, so here we go. We have our radio button, and we can check it. Okay, next part I'm just going to be glossing over because I covered all of this stuff quite in detail in the first tutorial, tutorial number 1 for this series. So spending the 10 minutes covering it again is a waste of time. So I expect that if you're watching tutorial number 4, I'm kind of expecting that you watch tutorial 1, 2, and 3. But for the most part, if you're only watching tutorial number 4, most of the stuff is standalone, so you can probably get by with just what's covered in this. Okay, so we'll just briefly go over positioning. So I'm going to change its position by doing its X and Y position in its options. And there we go, we've changed its position. Next, if I look here, I can see that the button is to the left of the text. If I want the button to be to the right of the text in the options, by default it's to the left. If I want to change that so that way the button is on the right, all I do is in the options just type in right. And now the button will be to the right of the text. Okay, so depending on how you want to do your design, you might want to decide that it's better to do it to the right or to the left, and that's how you do that. Let me see what my left and right radio groups. Okay, next is creating groups. So for the most part, if you're using a radio, it's because you want to create groups where you can only select one thing. So you'll have one or two, you'll have like 2 things that you can select. So do I want yes or no? Click one for, so if you click on yes, no will be off clicked. And if you click on no, yes will be off clicked. So it can only have one clicked at a time. So that's a group. The way we create groups with radios is in our code, as it reads through it, as long as our radio buttons are beside each other, so or after each other, so right here I have GUI add radio. If the line underneath it is another radio button, it'll automatically create those two as part of a group. So we'll just do that real quick. And we'll just add in some generic text. Okay. Okay, so here we go. We have radio button 1. If I click on this one, and then if I go and click on this one, it'll deselect this one, and vice versa. Right? And I can create as many. My mouse is starting to die, so I apologize for this, but it just won't stay. I need to get a new mouse. I cannot. You know what? I was going to say that it'll be faster for me to just copy and paste, but apparently that's not the case. So we'll add in another radio. Now I know that you probably understand everything, and I probably don't need to do this, but I really do like to do these tutorials as in-depth as I possibly can. So there's no misunderstanding. One of the things that I'm glad about is that throughout all of my tutorials, I don't think I've ever had a question in the comments having to do with the subject that I covered during the tutorial. So it seems like anyone who watches the tutorial, they do understand. So I'm pretty sure that by doing it this way, you have no doubt on what's going on. Okay, so here we go. We have a group of 3. Now let's say that I want to, let me make sure I'm not covering this later on. I have a basic lesson plan written out, and I just I spent about an hour or so working on it, and I just want to make sure that I don't step on the toes of something that I'm covering later. Okay, it looks like I'm okay to cover this. Okay, so the next thing is creating another group. So I have a group right now of 3 radio buttons. If I wanted to create another group, I have 2 ways that I can go about doing this. The first way is I can just add in another control of some other type. So I can do text, for example. And then let me try this one more time. Come on, let me copy. Nope. It just, I don't get it. It just, like, it randomly decides, okay, I can take that. And I'll just get rid of this. Okay, so here we go. Good enough. Okay, so like I said, we have 2 ways that we can separate our groups. One is by adding a control in between them. So it goes through the script, blah, 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 comes to this control, says, hey, we're done with this group. And if I add more radio buttons in later, they're going to be part of their own another group. Okay, so here I can click on those, and this is part of another group. One of the cool things about this is, even though this control is right after these ones here, I can actually position this. So in order to do that, I can actually position this way, way, way down. So I can go, let's say, X5, no, that's too big, 400, Y 400. And then that's about, let me, X plus 10. So I'm going to make all these 3 radios in one row, and then I'm going to have it right up close to this set of radios. Right underneath it, I'm going to have another set.
나 장동건. 오늘은 내가 쏜다. 진짜 맛집에서 먹자. 잘 먹겠습니다. 진짜 예술이지. 이 집 비결이 뭐예요?
And even though on the actual GUI they're going to be next to each other, they're still going to be part of another group, because this line is here. Even though this control is going to be way down at the bottom of the GUI, it's still separating it in the code, thus creating 2 groups. Let me just X 100, Y 120. Okay, so like I said, here's our text down here, but because it's in the code in between them, even though it's not actually next to them in position, it still creates a separation in the groups. So here I can click 1, 2, 3, and then if I click on this one, we can see that they are 2 different groups. Okay, so that's one way that we can create 2 different groups. The other way that we can create 2 different groups is in the options of the first radio button. So here I have 3 radio buttons that I want to be part of a group. In the in the options for the first one of that group, I just type in the word group. And then anything that follows it, will be in that group until it encounters this command, this option again. So I'm going to get rid of this text, and in the options here I'm going to do the same. So now it knows that these two here, these two radio buttons here, are part of this group, and it also knows that this is the beginning of a new group and that this one is part of that group. Alright, so this is probably the preferred way that you want to separate your groups. But often in your scripts, you're not going to have too. I mean, at least for me, I don't usually have too many groups of radio buttons right next to each other like this kind of deal. So usually in the code, I'll have something else, another kind of control that separates them. So I don't even actually usually have to use the group. I can usually use that kind of text thing that I did before. But if you want to be, sure of it 100% of the time, just type in group. Next, what we have is variables. Okay, so let me see if I can get rid of. I really, really hate my mouse button. I was hoping that this tutorial would only be 10 minutes, but yeah, it's not. Okay, so let me get rid of. I like to keep these tutorials topic specific as possible, so all that other stuff that I had there is just going to clutter it up and be something that's going to distract your eye, whereas I want to just cover one thing. Okay, so what we want to do now is, with the radio button, obviously it has a checked or unchecked value. So it has not checked and it has checked. And what we need to do is we need to assign that state to a variable. And that state is true or false, 1 or 0, right? Just binary state. So it's 0 if it's not checked, it's 1 if it is checked. But we need to store it to a variable. So we're just going to create a variable that we're going to store it to. And I like the name that I had before, so let me see. Yeah. So we've created a variable for it, put it in its options. If you're not familiar with this stuff, I covered this in the previous tutorials, so I'm not going to go too deep. So we have our variable, some random name, and now when we check that, that's the variable that's going to store that value. Okay, so that's adding a variable. Let me see. Next is attaching our radio button to a label. So let me see what I have here. Okay, so this is another thing that I'm just going to cover briefly. It's the same as we did with buttons and the edit field, where we're going to attach our radio button. So when they click on it, it's going to trigger a label or a subroutine. So I'll just G for go to. And then we just need a label name. And I had a label name written there. Wow.
동해바다 6마리 홍게 다리살이 들었다는 게 진짜게 가짜게?
I'm usually pretty literal with my naming when I do these. Okay, so we've made a call to it. So when we press on it, it's going to trigger this label to be executed. So I'm going to go down here now in my label section, and I'm actually going to add that in. So what did I call that? The radio buttons label. Colon, and like I said before, I've covered this kind of stuff in previous tutorials, so I'm just glossing over it. If you feel at all lost, I suggest you go and watch the earlier tutorials. Okay, so here we go. We have our label, and now we're going to show that it's actually doing something. So if you're familiar with my tutorials, usually I use something like a message box because it's easy for me to show you as you're watching this, it doing something. And if you're watching along with this and typing this out with me, when you it just basically gives you something to confirm that something happened, right? So message box, it pops up so that way you can confirm that something did happen. When you start scripting, it's obviously not going to be, well, I mean, most of the time it's not going to be a message box. It's going to be something else that it's executing, right? But the message box just allows us for training purposes. So now we have our radio control. We've assigned it to a variable that we don't need to worry about right now. What we're looking at right now is the label. So when you press the radio button, it's going to execute the contents of that label, which is just going to be a message box hello. So if I run it, and now when I click on this, it should, here, let me move it over here. It should hopefully execute that message box. And there we go. Okay. Okay, so that is attaching a radio to a label. Let me see what else I have in my... We're getting close to the end. A few more things. We're at 17 minutes. Okay, I really did want this tutorial to be only about 10 minutes, but and only one part. But it looks like I still have... I'm only about halfway through this, so I'm gonna stop this here, and I'll continue it on in a second part. Remember, if you like these kind of tutorials, if you want to see more AutoHotkey tutorials in the future, or if you'd like others to have the opportunity to see AutoHotkey tutorials in the future, be sure to hit the like button, and I'll see you on the next part. Do. Okay, so you can also make it pressing. Okay, so one of the other things that I have included with this attaching it to the label was that we can actually make it do other things besides just this submit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a brand new label. So I got a brand new label. And we're going to have it do something else besides just submitting the value. I actually wrote a program the other day, and I was thinking about, when I was writing this lesson, I was thinking a reason why I was going to show the other program for some reason. And when I came up this morning and I was trying to figure out why was I thinking of showing the other program, I couldn't figure it out. But now I remember, so I'll show you that in a second. Okay, so I have our checkbox, and I have it attached to a brand new label. Now, instead of our checkbox actually updating the value of that variable that we had, like instead of it updating the value of our variable here, we don't care about that this time. What we're actually going to get it to do is kind of behave more like a button. So we can actually use our checkbox in ways that they're perhaps not intended. We can use it for anything we really want. So we can have it behave kind of like we would expect for a button. So we press a button and we expect for something to happen. Well, we can use the checkbox the exact same way. In fact, we can use any control the exact same way. And I'm going to get to that in a couple of tutorials where we can really start doing some cool things. Okay, so let's see. Once again, to keep things simple, I'm just going to use a message box because it's the fastest way for me to demonstrate something without taking too much time. So message box. So, and just remember, it could be anything. This message box, you can replace it with anything. You could have it run a program. You could have it shoot missiles out of your eyeballs. You could have it do anything you want. I just use message box because it's easiest for me to type it up in quick succession, and it's easy for you to see that something's actually happening. Like I can make it something that's happening in the background, but that you can't actually see it. A message box, it pops up, you can see that something happened. Okay, so now when I save it and run it, instead of it, when I check the checkbox, instead of it updating the value for our variable, all it's going to do is go into this label and pop up our message box. And there we go, it did something. Okay, so that's it there. Now I do remember what I wanted. So the other day I was with some friends and we were playing cards and everything, and we wanted to play some dice, and we looked around, we couldn't find any dice, so I created a dice game. The game's not important, but the same way that I had this pop up a message box by clicking on it, this time if I click on one of these, what it's going to do is actually replace the image that's shown here. So right now you have a red 3 or a red die with the 3 on it. If I hit this, it's actually going to change it. Right? So I don't have to just use a checkbox just to update a value of a 0 or a 1. I can actually have it do other things besides just that. Right? Likewise, I can, just like with the other controls, I can make them disappear. So if I hit this button here, it's going to make those controls disappear. Okay? So like I said, that's some of the kinds of things you can do. I can't believe I didn't have anything else. There were some things that I didn't add into this. Okay, I'll go over one more quick thing. I know this tutorial's gone a lot longer. I'll probably review this. If I'm not happy with it, I'll redo it. But I meant to do this tutorial yesterday, and I just sat on it, and I sat on it all day today. And I just feel like if I don't get it over with, even if I'm not totally happy with the quality of it, I'm not going to get it done until like next month. So if I can live with it, I'm just going to live with it. Just bear with it. I'm rusty at these. Okay, so let's say that we wanted our control to be hidden in the beginning. So hide, and then I need this control. So what I'm going to type in is GUI control, comma, hide, comma, and then the next parameter is the variable that's associated with our control. So in this case, the variable that's associated with it is the checkbox 1 variable. And when we run it now, as soon as it runs it, it's going to hide our checkbox so we can't see it. And then what we're going to do is we're going to make it so that way when we press the button, it'll make it reappear. Now, is it show? I think it's show. Let me see. I'm going to get rid of this. We don't need this anymore. Okay, so when we hit the button, we're going to have it do GUI control, and then I think it's show. I'm not positive. Show, and then we need our control, which is our checkbox 1. Okay, so now when we run it, our checkbox is going to be hidden, and then if we hit the button, it should make it show. Okay, likewise, we can have it start off with a disabled state, and then when we hit our button, we'll enable it. So you notice how the text right now is this red. Watch what happens when because it's going to be in its disabled state, and you're going to be able to tell that it's in a disabled state by the text. So you see it's all grayed out. We can't interact with it, but then if I hit the button, it goes back to being interactable. Okay, I think that's it for this tutorial. I will see you on the next one. I haven't really decided which I'm going to do next, but there's a tutorial that I'm really been itching to do, but I have a few others that I have to cover first just to make sure we're in sequence. So I'll see you on the next one. I don't know what it is yet.